Hello, it's the Wednesday Night Roundup. I'm Pete Perry here in Washington, D.C. And this is going to be a weekly series I do, just sort of a general roundup of what's happening in the news and locally with the activism world here in Washington, D.C. I've been a peace with justice activist for well over a decade now, and I know and work with many other progressive activists in Washington, D.C. So, what's been happening recently is that every morning, a group of activists have been gathering on the House side of the U.S. Congress on Capitol Hill, usually the Rayburn cafeteria around 9:30 and 10. So different groups are involved. A lot of it has been spearheaded by Code Pink, but I don't want to say that it's only Code Pink activists. Other activists are involved as well. Recently, Christians for Peace has had a presence up there on Capitol Hill as well. So the campaign now, of course, is to end the genocide that is happening in Gaza, where more than 40,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed by the Israeli Defense Forces in their ongoing invasion of the Gaza Strip. Um, Approximately half of those civilians killed are children. And so that's extremely disturbing. And this wanton killing, um, they Israel, the state of Israel, has maintained that they're targeting Hamas. They want to basically destroy all of Hamas, but what they're doing in the meantime is essentially decimating an entire population of Palestinians that are in the impoverished Gaza Strip that has already gone through many attacks and invasions of the Israeli Defense Forces over the last decade. So there was already a lot of destruction and weakness in the infrastructure there. But after the horrible October 7th attack, terrorist attack in Israel, Israel has now engaged in collective punishment and, like I said, wanton destruction and death in Gaza Strip. And the number of Israelis killed in that horrible terrorist attack was, I want to say, something around 1,600. So we're talking about 34,000 or more, close to 40,000, around 40,000 civilians, half children, now killed by Israeli Defense Forces seeking justice for the October 7th attack led by Hamas and pledging to wipe out Hamas. But anyway, so that is what this group of activists are doing. They're lobbying members of Congress and speaking out very loudly and clearly during hearings, Foreign Affairs Committee, the Military Affairs Committee, and so forth up there on Capitol Hill, mostly on the House side. They've done some work on the Senate side, but the focus now seems to be on the House. Um, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, that's kind of problematic because the real right wing, really right wing um, Republicans, who are, of course, very Zionist, are concentrated more on the House side than the Senate side. But maybe that's why they feel compelled to confront that. And in other news, Donald Trump is um, at the very beginning stages of his first criminal trial. I believe how many? 34 felony counts, something like 34 felony counts just in this one alone. But the media is clearly stating that they're very unsure that the other three coming trials are even going to happen before the election. So, third day of jury selection today. Trump can't keep his mouth shut. The media uh, seems to want to interview him every morning as he's walking into the courthouse. And he just badmouths the judge, badmouths the entire judicial system, and claims that this case against him was initiated by the Biden administration, which is completely false. It was initiated by the Manhattan District Attorney, which is not under this jurisdiction of the federal government. and of course, the Biden administration has nothing to do with it. Um, and the media loves to call it the hush money trial, which is not very accurate too. The actual charges have to do with covering up and falsifying business records, which is a form of fraud. It's not the first time that he's faced fraud charges. Um, I think people will remember the whole Trump University debacle, which is a fake university, just another way for him to make money off people's gullibility. Um, what else is going on in the news? Oh, well, Israel pledges that now they're going to hit Iran again. They first hit Iran, sparking, which is basically a state of war between the state of Israel and Iran. Israel first struck Iran's diplomatic facility in Syria, killing seven. And then Iran responded 2 weeks later with drone strikes. And basically, Israel and the U.S. and its other backers knew that this strike was coming, so they were able to easily take those those missiles out of the air, knock them down before they reached any target. But now, even though they handled it well and knocked all the Iranian missiles down, Israel pledges that they're still going to strike back. Netanyahu has also not backed down from his pledge to invade Rafah, which is where a large portion of the Palestinian population has fled to. Most have lost their homes and they've fled to the refugee camps in Rafah, which is the border with Egypt, the very southern end of the Gaza Strip. Um, Biden does nothing more than simply say, I'll be very unhappy if you invade Gaza, but I'm not going to like stop sending you weapons and whatnot. And we're going to build this pier to get aid into Gaza, which is good. But at the same time they're doing that, they continue to send Israel more weapons to decimate the civilian population. Um, Let me see. I should talk about something else in the news. I don't know. I haven't kept up as much as I want to. I know that I don't want to talk too much about presidential elections because a lot of talking heads talk about that. But I will say that it appears that Trump is slipping a little bit in polling with Biden, and that RFK Jr. Really, it depends how many states ballots RFK Jr. gets on. But at this point, if he does get on the ballots, he will have an impact and could clearly hurt Biden's chances of being reelected. Jill Stein, the Green Party, because I live in Washington, D.C., I will most likely vote for her again because Washington, D.C. goes 90 to 93% Democrat every single presidential election. Um, that's just how DC is, extremely Democrat. So I feel fine voting for Jill Stein. This would be my third time actually voting for her for president. I think she's an excellent individual, very intelligent, and I agree with her on almost all the major issues. Cornel West, I respect as as an academic, a wise philosopher, and a good activist. I don't think he's a great presidential candidate for a number of reasons, but it's kind of expressed through the number of missteps that his campaign has had. First, starting off with Nick Brana's sort of vanity project, do nothing nonsense, People's Party, then quickly switching to the Green Party, then quickly leaving the Green Party to become independent because he didn't want to deal with the party inner workings of the Green Party. He didn't want to deal with that. He just wanted to be their nominee right away. But no, it's like we actually have a primary process within the Greens you'd have to go through. And then his snuggling up with his buddy Harlan Crow. Harlan Crow is the billionaire who has put Clarence Thomas on luxury excursions, flying on his private jet, and also gave money to something about Clarence Thomas's grandchild's college tuition or something. It had something to do giving money to that. So that's the same Harlan Crow who Cornel West says is a great friend of mine, and took money from him too, but he did return a lot of those funds, campaign contributions that Harlan Crow gave him, but he's still really good buddies with this billionaire. And then there was another misstep recently. Well, I mean, I agree with him that we should, of course, challenge the U.S. government's relationship to the state of Israel, but the way he and his recently picked running mate, who's professor in the University of California system, and she's been involved with Black Lives Matter, which is great, but they did not handle an interviewer very well, where they basically came off sounding like they were praising Hamas. I don't think that's what they meant to do, but they kind of said that Hamas's October 7th action was actually that was the counter-terrorist measure by launching this terrorist attack on civilians, including at a music festival. That, that Hamas was engaging in counterterrorism against Israel's acts of terrorism for decades. I understand the rhetorical point, but it was not well. You should not be praising Hamas, especially when they do something that heinous. So it's another big misstep by the Cornell West. So I'm fine with voting for Jill Stein because I'm in Washington, D.C. If it was across the river in Virginia, it's a lot closer there. I would probably vote for old man Joe and not be enthusiastic about it, but you have to be realistic with the state of our politics. A lot of my progressive activist friends will, you know, go after me for that, but I don't want to focus too much on electoral politics. I want to focus more on what we can do on the ground level. In California, they shut down the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco to protest against our government's ongoing support of sending weapons to Israel and so forth. And there were other disruptions and shutdowns too. A friend of mine in Texas, they believe shut down gates at a weapons manufacturing plant. They shut down all the gates there for several hours. Doesn't sound like there were any arrests there, though, but I'm sure there were some arrests at the Golden Gate Bridge, and there was some disruptions and arrests, I believe, at the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. So, yeah, I'm more interested in what we're doing on the ground level, 364 days of the year, than just the one election day than when we cast a ballot. I think fundamental progressive change will come from the pressure on the street, from the activists working so hard day in, day out, like we're seeing on Capitol Hill. Um, I don't have a whole lot more to add to it than that. I look forward to doing this sort of Wednesday roundup every every Wednesday night at about this time. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. Bye bye.